يا أيها الناس قد جاءكم برهان من ربكم وأنزلنا إليكم نورا مبينا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. O Allah, open my heart, make my task easy for me, and remove the knots from my tongue, so they may understand my speech. So to recap the aims of each of the lessons that we're going to cover, we will look at the letter names and the phonetic sound of each letter and the articulation point of each letter, which in Arabic we call the Makhraj. For each letter, we will pronounce it with one of the three short vowels on, Fatha, Kasra, Dhamma, and we will also pronounce the letter with Sukoon, which means free from one of these short vowels. So every letter in the Arabic alphabet will either have one of the short vowels on them or a Sukoon on them. And a letter which is empty in the Quran is also in the state of Sukoon. So the Sukoon can be visible or it can be completely empty, i.e. it can be invisible, so it's still in the state of Sukoon. So the letter name is Fa, and the phonetic sound is also Fa, and the Arabic Fa has a very similar sound to the English F. So the articulation point is the upper incisors resting on the inner side of the lower lip. So care needs to be taken that's the inner side of the lower lip and not the outer side, which would be the articulation point of V. So make sure that the upper incisors are resting gently, and it's a gentle rest. We shouldn't be digging the incisors into the lip. It's a gentle rest of the incisors on the inner side of the lower lip. And you can see it's a thin letter, so you can see that there's no thickening of the tongue, there's no concaving of the tongue, there's no echo in the mouth, and there's no narrowing in the throat area. So care needs to be taken to keep it into a thin letter. So with the three vowels on, fa, fu, fi. So be careful we don't say fa. If I say fa, I've created an echo in my mouth and I've a concaving in my tongue to make it into a thickened letter. So be careful that the tongue remains relaxed and there's no echo sound in the mouth. Fa, fu, fi. And when it's with a sukoon, then care needs to be taken that you give time for the characteristics to naturally occur. F, F. So again, as we said in the previous lesson, the important point when the letter is with a sukoon is to stay on the articulation point until the characteristics naturally finish. So if I came off here too quickly, afa, then I would give a qalqala sound, which is a vibration sound, which is the incorrect characteristic for this letter. This letter doesn't have a vibration sound. So be careful that we stay on the articulation point to give time for the characteristics to naturally occur. So we have a sound and the breath clearly running through the makhraj, through the articulation point. F, F. So this letter name is Qaf, and the phonetic sound is Qa. And this is the last elevated and thickened letter of the Arabic alphabet that we've covered so far. So far we've had Kha, Sad, Dad, Ta, Dha, and Ghain. So this is the last of the thickened, the elevated letters. So you can see there's an elevation of sound, and there's elevation of the back of the tongue. And so the elevation of the back of the tongue is also due to the articulation point, which is the back of the tongue touching the soft palate. So we have an elevation of sound, we have concaving of the middle of the tongue, and we have a strong echo sound in the mouth, and we also have narrowing in the throat area for the qaf. So the articulation point of the qaf is the back of the tongue, so that's the furthest point of your tongue touching the soft palate. Qa, qa. And when it's pronounced with one of the vowels, fatha, dhamma, kasra, qa, qu, qi, care needs to be taken that we don't mix it with the ha, which if we remember on the previous lesson that we had, the ha was also at the articulation point of the soft palate, but where the soft palate falls into the throat. So the qaf and the ha are neighboring each other. Even though they're in their own articulation points, they're very near to each other. So care needs to be taken that when pronouncing the qaf, that we're on the furthest point of the tongue, qa, and when we're pronouncing the ha, that we're in the throat. So where the tongue falls down into the throat, and when the soft palate falls down into the throat, we're in the throat area. So be careful not to mix the qaf and the ha. So qa and ha, qa, ha. So be careful we don't mix the two letters up, which is a common mistake I often hear with students, especially because they're right next to each other and they're both using the soft palate area. So it's a thick letter, the same as the ha. The ha was also a thick letter. Ha, hu, khi, and here qa, qu, qi. And again, we don't have a similar letter to the qaf in English. We don't have a letter similar to this. We have a k, but we don't have a qa. So it's another tricky letter for English-speaking students because we don't have a similar sound in the English language, which is the reason why it's important to understand where it's articulated where it's articulated from, and it will need lots of practice to pronounce correctly, inshallah. So when it's pronounced with a sukoon, then again this is another letter of qalqala that we have, another vibrated letter. So aqo, aqo. So it's the same as the ba that we've had, and the jim that we've had, and the dal that we've had, and the ta that we've had. So these are all vibrated letters, or where the sound is vibrated, and there's a qalqala, which in Arabic which we call qalqala. So there's a vibration of the sound. So care needs to be taken that we come off as soon as we reach the articulation point of the letter, which is the back of the tongue touching the soft palate, that we come off the articulation point immediately. Aqo, aqo. We don't say aqo, aqo. So we don't allow any time in between. As soon as you touch the articulation point, we have to come off the articulation point straight away. Aqo, aqo. And care needs to be taken to keep it into a thick letter. So we have the letter name here is kaf, and the phonetic sound is ka. And this is similar to the English K that we have. And the articulation point is the back of the tongue touching the in between the soft and the hard palate, right in front of qaf. So remember on the previous slide, the qaf was on the furthest point of the tongue in the mouth, and for the kaf we're just moving slightly in front of the qaf, whereas the qaf was purely on the soft palate. The kaf is using the soft and the hard palate, so it's in between the two parts. Care needs to be taken because we're elevating the back of the tongue for the kaf, because that's the articulation point of the letter. Care needs to be taken that we don't allow any elevation of sound in the kaf, and also we don't allow any concaving of the tongue, and we don't allow the narrowing of the throat in making it into a thick letter. So it's not ka, it's ke, ke. So make sure there's no echo in the mouth and there's no elevation of sound. So when it's pronounced with one of the three vowels, so fatha, dhamma, kasra, ka, ku, ki, not ka. So it should be ka, ka. So make sure the tongue is thin, and there's no echo in the mouth, and there's no narrowing in the throat, and there's no elevation of sound. It's very easy to elevate the sound because we're elevating the back of the tongue, because that's the articulation point. So be careful that we keep it thin. Ka, ku, ki. And when it's pronounced with a sukoon, ek, ek. So it has a similar sound to the ta, which was at. So in both the kaf and the ta, the sound is cut and the breath is allowed to run. So ek. It shouldn't be ek. It shouldn't be a vibration which we had for the qaf. So it's not a qalqala letter. So be careful that we don't give the incorrect characteristics for the kaf. So we make it different to the qaf. The qaf was aqo, and this is ek. So be careful that we don't jump off the makhraj of this letter, making it into a qalqala letter. So let's summarize the three letters that we've covered in this lesson. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the letter shape. So the qaf and the fa have a similar letter shape. So they have a circle at the top. The qaf has 2 dots above, and the fa has one dot above. And the qaf has a shorter tail, and the fa has a longer tail. And when both the qaf and the fa are written at the beginning and the middle, you can see that the middle of it is not filled in. So this is how you would differentiate it from the ghain. So the ghain can be mixed with the fa, because the ghain is also 1 dot above. But the difference with the ghain when it appears in the middle is that it would have like an upside down triangle, and it would be filled in the center, whereas the fa is not filled in. So be careful that you remember what the fa looks like. So the middle of the inside of the fa and the qaf are not filled in. And the kaf can sometimes look a bit strange, especially when it comes at the beginning of a word and in the middle of the word. And then at the end of the word you would have a shape inside the kaf as well sometimes. So try and differentiate how the letters appear when they're in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. So the kaf is a light letter, it's a thin letter, ka, ku, ki. The qaf is a thick letter, qa, qu, qi. And the fa is a thin letter, fa, fu, fi. So be careful you distinguish the kaf from the qaf, because again these two are next to each other in articulation points. So it's very easy to mix the two, and it's very easy to mix the thickness and the thinness between the two as well. Ka, ku, ki, qa, qu, qi, fa, fu, fi. And when it's with a sukoon, ak, and the qaf, aqo, and the fa, ath, ak, aqo, ath. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. O Allah, glory be to you and all praise due to you. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship besides you, and I seek forgiveness from you and return to you in obedience.
وأن أتلو القرآن فمن اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فقل إنما أنا من المنذرين.